Welcome to another edition of Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show. I'm Anthony T. In this edition, it'll be a interview-only episode as I will be interviewing Meghan Adara, star of the film The Cellar, which is currently playing on the festival circuit. That'll be next segment right after this intro because this is a 40-minute interview. So that'll pretty much take up most of this episode. Then in What's Anthony T Watching, I will review a film from a director that hit my top 10 list in 2022 with her debut film, We're All Going to the World's Fair. I think you know what title I'm talking about. And if you don't, you'll have to wait until What's Anthony T Watching at the end of this podcast to figure out what I'm watching this episode. And I'll be back with my interview with Meghan Adara.
Welcome to Dark Discussions, your place for the discussion of horror film, fiction, and all that's fantastic. A weekly podcast where the discussion is about the most recent horror and genre films. Intelligent talk on a genre that deserves intelligence. A conversation between co-hosts discussing not only the film, but also the connotation that the directors and screenwriters are trying to articulate. When you want more than a review, listen to Dark Discussions.
And speaking of perception, there's just one more scene I want to talk about, which is after Caleb discovers that Kyoto's a robot. Kyoto kind of peels off her skin, showing him what's underneath.
Now, wait a minute. I know where you're going with this, but tell me you weren't already thinking this 15 minutes earlier in the film. Exactly what he's thinking at that moment.
Which is he's a robot, too.
Oh, I considered the possibility.
Right, and that's what I like, is the fact that the writers were smart enough to know that this is what the audience would be thinking.
We've all seen Blade Runner.
Right, exactly.
www.darkdiscussions.com, wherever podcasts are found.
The following interview contains spoilers for the upcoming film that we're going to talk about. So I'm just letting you know that there's a spoiler warning attached to this interview. Welcome back. I'm here with my guest this episode. She's a British actress who has a few credits to her name, including a horror film that horror fans might know, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. But she is here today to talk about her latest psychological horror film, The Cellar. Meghan Adara.
Hi, how are you?
How are you doing today, Meghan?
I'm good, how are you?
Good.
Good.
What made you want to get into acting?
I'm not overly sure. It wasn't something, when I was younger that it was I want to be an actress when I grow up sort of thing. Basically, my friend just invited me to a theatre group that she went to once a week, and I ended up going with her, and from that point on I really enjoyed it, and I tried to do everything in my power to do other acting things, join other theatre groups in summer holidays, and then went on to do it in school, college and uni, and I just fell in love with it. I got to express myself in a different way, and it was really creative, and I met so many lovely people that obviously that pushed me to do it even more. But it wasn't something, as when I was younger, that it was, I knew I wanted to do it for my whole life, that sort of thing. I kind of just basically did it as a little side hobby, and it turned into my career, which I'm very grateful for.
Now, you're from Britain.
Yep.
Tell everyone about the British indie horror scene, because we here in the U.S. are more accustomed to horror that contains violence and gratuitous gore.
Yeah.
And with Britain, I know there's some films that have that, but there's also films that are more cerebral and focus on the psychological aspects.
Yeah, it's really great that you mentioned that. Obviously, most horrors you see, and I guess horror, fans expect to see some form of, jump scare or, some form of gore. And within, like, obviously that is still the case here in, the UK. Like, I love seeing some, like, really scary horror films, and that's what I expect from a horror film as well. So going into this film and being, thrown into the indie horror film scene here, because I hadn't done, a lot of them. Some of them were just short films, or if I had done a horror film, I wasn't the lead, so I didn't get the whole, experience of being the lead in a horror film and getting the, experience backstage and what goes into promoting it, etc. So from what I've seen, I think it's a way of, particularly in the Cellar, is to find, something else other than gore and jump scares that is going to make your film more unique and isn't just the same as every other, horror film that you've seen. And I think that indie horror as well, it really allows you to be really creative with what you're doing with your scripts. You're not a massive movie, production company that, like, this is what we want, this is what we're aiming for. It allows, I would say, it allows people to be more creative, and put way, more time and energy into what they're wanting to do, and, focus on something that hasn't been done before within a genre that, people love, so much and are really, like, connected with. So yeah, the indie horror film scene here is really starting to pick up within, I would say, the last, few years. It's become a massive thing. But I think, yeah, the indie film here is, creatives being able to write their own thing and come up with a story that hasn't been done before as a unique selling point, and to try new things, to be like, horror doesn't just have to be, really gory and scared, like, jump scares, and that you can be scared in a different kind of way, rather than obviously using what you expect, a clown or someone jumping out or a thing, like following you, etc. And then obviously like really, really gory scenes. So yeah, I would say that it's a really cool way to do a horror, and to, expand on what you expect a horror to be. Yeah.
Speaking of the Cellar, tell everyone about the film and your character in the film.
About my character?
In the film itself.
Yeah. So basically, she, Abigail, is the character I play, and she has had some hardships in her personal life that you don't, the audience doesn't necessarily get to see or know. So I had a backstory. I created a backstory for my character Abigail based on some of the stuff that, Jamie sent me to prepare for the role and obviously for the film. And so the film picks up with this girl, Abigail, and she joins a church to find refuge and to find a community and to find a sense of belonging, because she, hasn't felt in her life so far that she really fits in anywhere, doesn't have a lot of friends, and, she wants to start, exploring herself more and get to understand, herself a bit more, and, experience new things. The most important thing for her is to find a sense of community where she feels like she belongs and is welcomed. So she joins this church, and it turns out that the church isn't what she expected. She ends up waking up in a cell, completely, like locked away in this cell. No one's around. She's trying to find a way out, because obviously she doesn't understand how she's got there, has no recollection of how she got there, why she's there. And basically it just follows Abigail's journey with fighting the very obviously visible threat. As if you watch the film, you understand what I mean. The threat that she's, obviously having to deal with actually in, reality, but also using the demons and the threat within herself, and using that to obviously help her and push her to get out of this immediate threat that she's experiencing in real life. And basically she confronts her own demons as well as these physical threat demons, and she basically has to try and escape from this cellar while finding out clues about how she got there and why she's there, answering these questions for herself and obviously for the audience as well. And yeah, so it's basically, a girl experiencing her own demons and having to deal with these real threats, and trying to get herself out alive from this church that she thought was, a nice place to go, but turns out it was a cult, and her having to fight for her life to get out alive. So yeah, it's pretty deep and intense.
Now, this is your first leading role.
Yeah.
What was the audition process like in landing the lead in this film?
Well, I didn't audition for the lead in this film, which obviously isn't the usual way. Obviously, you do usually have to audition, and if I was to audition, obviously you would contact the company or casting director of the project that you found, send an application in, and then, if they deem you suitable for that character, they would then invite you for an audition. Obviously, since COVID, it's more like common to do a self-tape. So usually you would, be at home and you'd prepare the script and, the character backstory, and then you'd film it and then you send it off. In most cases, in a feature film, there will be a recall because obviously they want to make sure that you are the right fit. They've seen they've seen your self-tape and they liked it, but they want to make sure we're doing another scene and talking to them and for them to understand what you think about the character and what your choices are. So usually you would do a 2-round audition for a feature film. However, in this case, I didn't audition. So Jamie and I have worked on multiple other projects before, as actor and actor together. And we'd known each other for a while, and one day he just, messaged me saying that he's written this short film. It didn't have a name, but would I want to be part of it? Sent me the script and said, tell me what you think. And I was like, okay. So I read it. It was probably maybe 5 pages, maybe 6 at a push pages. Very similar, obviously, to the actual feature now. But the plan was to film these 5 pages, and then get a proof of concept, edit it together, send it to distribution companies, put it out, on social media to get, traction on the film, and also be able to raise funds to, obviously fund the film as well. But I read the script and I loved it. I thought it was really unique and very different, and I hadn't read anything that Jamie had read before, so I was really excited to see what, he had written. And there's a girl at the beginning and she opens the prologue to the film, and I thought that was the role he wanted me to do. So I just said to him, I really love the script, I'd love to be part of it. What character were you thinking for me to play? I said the prologue one, the opening scene. He said, no, I want you to play the lead. And I was like, oh, okay, that's amazing. I'm really, happy that he's chosen me to play the lead and that he trusts me to do it. But obviously at that point I was under the impression that it was a short film. So we scheduled a day to film the 5 pages of this short film. And at the end I said to him, do you know if we'll be doing any other days? He said probably not for a while, I want to get this out there, get some funding, get some, traction on it, and then we'll see. And then basically from there, it turned into a feature film without telling me. It was just like, oh, this is here's a script for a feature film. And from that point, we filmed days here and there, weekends when, other cast members were available and crew were available. So yeah, initially it started off as a short film, and it progressed into a feature film. And yeah, I didn't audition purely because I know Jamie and we've worked together before. So yeah, it was really lovely to work with him because it was a different experience for me working with him on a set in a different role. So that was really interesting, and I loved the experience, and I'd love to work with him again. He's a very, very good director. Yeah.
Now, besides what I liked about the script was the way it mysteriously introduced the character and the way the film relays more on the actions and movements instead of dialogue for the most of it.
Yeah.
What was it like performing those movements? Because a lot of the scenes in this film are dialogue-less.
Yes. The majority of the film has no dialogue, yeah. So yeah, it was, when I read the script, as I said, it was a short film, so there wasn't a lot of dialogue in that script, the initial script. There was a bit of dialogue, but there wasn't a lot. So I didn't know, what to expect for the rest of the filming because, I didn't know it was going to be a feature film. And then when he wrote the feature-length version, he basically, as we went on, and he found a location, once he'd found a location and he'd actually got it, booked to shoot there, he would then write a part of the script based on the location to make sure that, the location fitted in with the film and, told the same story and show it progressing. So from the moment I got the initial script, there was not a lot of dialogue. And then when I got the feature length one, there wasn't a lot of dialogue in that either. And initially I was a bit taken aback, oh my God, there's hardly any dialogue. I mean, I have done films where, they haven't got any dialogue, but not for basically the whole film. So it was kind of, because what I usually do with a script is obviously you have the lines and you read in between the lines and you figure out, what they mean and why she's saying it, the tone of voice and the situation she is in. But as you said, there is no dialogue. So the process for analysing that script was analysing her actions and, finding out what her headspace is like and why she's doing, these things and why isn't she talking? What is the reason she's not talking for? And getting on it took a lot of preparation because, as you said, there is no dialogue. So you've got to make sure that your physical acting and your facial expressions obviously match what is happening and tells the story to the best of your ability because there is no dialogue to help with aiding that. But yeah, so I did a lot of preparation. But when I actually got on set and I was in the actual locations, it was so so immersive that it didn't feel too daunting once I was there. And once I'm on a set, I'm ready to go. So I was excited to do it. It was a challenge. But before we also shot any scenes, Jamie would run through what the scene we're doing, what the character, is thinking, why she's thinking it, why she's reacting like this, and he'd do a little bit of a unofficial blocking, not necessarily being you need to get here every take. It was just this is the sort of thing I want. Now you embody it how you think, but this is an idea of what I want. So that also really helped with the physicality as well, with obviously telling her emotion and her physical body wise and facially what she's experiencing without using dialogue. So it was a very interesting experience, and I think it really helped with honing some other skills that I didn't necessarily have when I first started the film. And I think it's made me a better actor because it's made me more aware of when there isn't dialogue. You've really got to make sure and emphasize that you are portraying and conveying what the character's going through, because obviously dialogue is a very important thing in films, and that is usually what gets the emotion across. And when you take that away, you really have to make sure that your physicality is telling that and making sure that your physicality is replacing the dialogue and making sure it doesn't feel like there needs to be dialogue. So yeah, it was challenging, but I really loved it. and I'd love to do another role, that doesn't necessarily have a lot of dialogue. Yeah.
This is a film that is mostly a cat and mouse thriller with aspects of alcoholism and religious aspects in play. What was it like working with the screenplay with those elements in a psychological horror film?
Yeah, it was, because initially in the script, it wasn't in the script, so it was probably maybe a week and a bit before the shoot. We knew we were filming in a church of some sort because that was in the script, but the actual details of what was happening in the church wasn't told to us for like a week before. So when we got it, it was really moving reading, these stories of these characters and what got them there. And I think it really helped with, showing the desperation of these characters and, what has led them there and why. What are they looking for? What are they, looking to be forgiven for? And I think that really helped with showing the psychological side to it and, gave a different feeling and atmosphere to the film, made it more, as I said, it was quite emotional, so it made it quite more realistic. And someone who actually wrote that script had experienced being in, an AA meeting, and he wrote that bit along with Jamie, helping them get it, right to what would happen in real life. And actually, when filming it, it did feel real. I was sat there, I had no lines, and just listening to, these other character stories was actually really moving. And I wasn't on camera, but I was getting myself getting personally moved by these stories. It was actually quite, upsetting, and you really did think about people that had gone through this, and it gave you a better understanding, of why people drink. And the cycle, obviously, and then that feeds into the psychological part, not just, psychological horror, but the psychological stages of these people, the different stages of what they're mentally going through. So I think that fed also into the psychological horror part, not just being, you're you've got a cult person and they're trying to like reach immortality, not just psychological in that sense, but actually psychological mental health as well of these characters. So I think that really, deepened the meaning behind the film and, what the story of the film was about, and conveying that to the best that we could. So it was a very fun scene to do, in terms of, that was the one of the scenes that is the most dialogue heavy, and just sitting there being able to, as an actor, watch other people work was a pleasure as well. But the stories were harrowing, and I remember just sitting there feeling really moved. Yeah.
It also, I think, really added to the dread of the film as well. Yeah, because obviously it's these people going there because they've got a problem. They want to have help. They want to be around people who are going through it too, so that they can feel a sense of belonging, and they don't feel like they're going to be judged. And these people are there to support them, and they're in the most vulnerable state that they could be in their lives, and they've gone there, with the hope of getting help. And they've been, preyed upon and taken, fed on their vulnerabilities, and it's been used against them when they're, in their darkest point. So, yeah. Some of this film has you moving from room to room by yourself or being chased by the villain.
Yeah.
Was it physically, emotionally demanding or draining? As well as the shoot went on?
Yeah, I mean, the first shoot, I was super excited. I was like, this is going to be so cool. The location's really cool. And then as the shoot went on, it did get, obviously, there, as you said, there's no dialogue. It's all physical storytelling, and trying to act with no dialogue and purely just through physical movements and facial expressions. That is like super tiring because, you're you're playing a different character, and you're having to be in the headspace of that character, and just alone being in the headspace of that character is mentally draining. Obviously, also physically draining, because there's a lot of physical, demands in the film. And sometimes the locations weren't, let's just say, the cleanest. I mean, the first scene when I'm walking in the tunnels, they're actually the walls are actually caked in mold. So that added to the physicality, because that was grim. Having to jump down off these like ledges and, running down the stairs, having to hide from these people, and sometimes you wouldn't even cut during the scene. So you're basically doing the whole scene. So obviously at the end of doing it multiple times, you are actually like drained, because you've just done this whole thing without, a cut in between. But I think it really helped with portraying the character's, emotional stability, mental disability, and her, what she's going through physically. I think it really added to the story, which is obviously really important. But also during the shoot, I found out that I had a medical problem that I had to be hospitalized for. So finding that out as well during the shoot, having to pretend like nothing's wrong, and going and doing this demanding scene, both mentally and physically, while knowing that you're not, in yourself, your health isn't the best at that moment. That was also draining as well. So yeah, I mean, it was physically demanding in every single way possible, really. But I think when you watch the film, and after shooting at the end, you felt so grateful to have had the opportunity to work on that film, and the people that you got to work with, and tell a story that everybody in that cast and crew had put so much effort into it, so much love into it, that when you watch it, you're like, okay, it was draining physically, mentally, but it was worth it. And yeah.
Now, the opening shot of this film really creeped me out
Yeah.
because of the way the scenery looked and everything.
Yeah.
Tell me about the film's main locations.
Yeah.
Because that really looked like that was an actual location.
Yeah. Every single location was an actual, either venue, or, the main one was the Cellars, the one where I'm walking through the tunnels. They were underneath a hotel in Brighton, and I think we filmed there maybe 4 times, so that was like the main location. And obviously it's the opening scene, and obviously she is locked away underground, so we needed somewhere to look, eerie and dark, and get that across. So the tunnels was underneath this hotel in Brighton, and that was one of our main locations, and probably one of my favourite locations. And then the other one that I really loved was the St Leonard's B&B, which is the location that looks really, grand and really, expensive. Like, all the stuff in there was so cool. The wallpaper was amazing. All the, ornaments were amazing. I mean, it was breathtaking, and being able to film there was amazing. And actually that day and that location is my favourite. One, because I had other people there, like all the other actors, all the crew members were there. So I wasn't, even though I was still filming shoots and shots on my own, there was people there, actors who, you can talk to and get to know, and obviously I knew some of them already, so it was lovely having them there. But also just filming in that location felt amazing. Really privileged to be able to film there. It was my favourite one, just because of, how, being there. It felt creepy, because, I mean, it's an old Victorian Airbnb. But yeah, that was one of my favourite locations. It was absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, those underground tunnels look like something came from like the 17 or 1800s.
Yeah, that was what Jamie was going for. He wanted something really eerie and dark, to really get across the desperation that she's in, and also to make it look like obviously she's like having to like find her way through these tunnels and she doesn't necessarily know where she's going, and also the suspense of possibly bumping into one of these masked figures that she has no idea, she hasn't seen them yet, which added to the location as well and film.
What was it like being in one of those rooms down, all the way downstairs in that old Victorian house?
Yeah, well, when I was downstairs, I always had someone in the room with me, so it didn't feel, when you walked in initially, it was like, oh, okay, this is creepy, but it's cool. I like how it's done, but I don't think I'd ever want to stay here because it's absolutely terrifying. But I always had someone in the rooms downstairs with me, so I wasn't alone. So that was fine. It was there's a scene right at the top of the house, and all the crew are on the second floor, so I'm on the first floor on my own, and they actually wanted me to come out of one of the rooms, and it was pitch black, and I just had to stand in this room, and I remember just putting my back against the door and watching in pitch black because it was so terrifying. I got this real feeling of unease and feeling of, I just want to get this one out the way because I really don't like being in this room. And I remember saying to them, like, can we just do 2 takes of this because I really can't be in that room anymore. I'm super scared. So it wasn't necessarily the downstairs rooms that creeped me out. It was the upstairs room that creeped me out.
You also had to react to special effects during the course of the film.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like reacting to those?
So some of them weren't there. Yeah, some of them weren't there, and they were put in, after in edit. So sometimes you're reacting to nothing that's there, which is interesting and very confusing because they're like, just imagine this thing's there and you're really scared of it, or you're just looking at something and it's not there, but in the film, it'll make sense. So yeah, and then obviously other times I was reacting to, actual objects or people. There's a scene in the hotel when I wake up in the bed and the phone rings. That was one that obviously the phone didn't actually ring because it was actually a hotel's phone to call reception. So I basically just had to pretend that I hear this phone ringing and then obviously like get distracted by it and scared and react to it. And then obviously picking up the phone, I have to pretend like someone's talking down the phone to me and there's no one actually there. So getting the timings right of how long to hold the phone there to make it look like you've actually listened to something, and then also mentally being like, I need to facially react to what I'm hearing when no one's there. That was interesting. And then there was another one in the hotel room when I opened the curtains and I had to jump and react like I've been, shocked, because it's one of the masked figures' costumes, like, what's it called, like workwear, basically. And I had to do that one quite a few times because every time I opened the wardrobe door, I was preemptively reacting to it because I knew it was in there. And obviously they wanted me to open it and get like a fright and gasp basically because I think it's actually a guard, and then realise it's just the costume that they wear has been left in there, and then I had to react to that as well, but obviously that bit wasn't as difficult because obviously it's physically there. But those 2 parts were the most, I would say, in a weird way, the most difficult because obviously you're reacting to something that this isn't necessarily there. And that's when obviously the facial expressions and physicality really has to be strong to portray that there is something there when you, the actor, know there isn't anything there. But you've got to get that across, the portrayal across of something is there, because obviously once it's edited, those missing elements that I didn't have will be there in the film. So yeah, that was an interesting day. Yeah.
Now, it takes a while for your character to have some dialogue in this film. What was it like filming the dialogue scenes, given the fact that most of the film you're just running around and performing?
So I liked the fact that there wasn't a lot of dialogue, because it really helped with me immersing myself in the character. But the scene when we're in the St Leonard's and everyone was there that day, and she gets confronted by, the organisation, I had quite a lot of lines then, and I had a lot of lines when I'm on the phone to the police as well. I was actually really excited for those scenes. One, because I'm acting with other actors and that haven't been there for the majority of the shoot, so that was really nice to be able to act with actual actors there as well. But yeah, I think I just really loved doing those lines. I love acting, so obviously dialogue's going to be in it. But I really appreciated having those scenes with dialogue, because obviously the majority of the film I'm not talking. So it felt great to actually have a moment, the penultimate moment where I'm talking and everything, gets explained. And I think it even added to the fact of, she hasn't spoken this whole time. One, because obviously she doesn't want to get caught, and two, there is no one to talk to. So I think having only basically 2 scenes with me talking really added to the immersive experience of the film. And then obviously the penultimate part where I do end up speaking and everything starts to unravel. It was really really fun to shoot. It was my favourite scene to do, my favourite day on set, and yeah, I just loved being able to finally talk. It felt amazing. I was like, yay, finally I got a scene where I'm talking and I'm not just reacting to nothing. So yeah, it was really fun.
What was the most difficult scene to film? Because I can imagine there are a couple scenes in this film that were difficult to create.
So one of the first days when I'm in the lift, then I go up and then she comes in and she injects me in the neck. That was hard to shoot. Not only to react to, but that was in a hotel, so people kept wanting to use the lift, so we had to keep getting out the lift, because obviously we were annoying the people who were staying there. So that was awkward, but also the reacting to getting stabbed in the neck. First initially seeing her and having to react to her being there, thinking I've got away, and then realizing, oh my god, I'm actually in a lot of danger and I'm terrified. And then it was having to react to the needle going in and then obviously falling to the floor like I've collapsed, but trying to also make sure that you're still in shot of the camera and trying to get in the same position each time. That was a kind of a difficult shot. One, because the lift was so small, and obviously, as I said, guests wanted to use it. And then another one was again in St Leonard's, the day where everyone was there. One of the guards, Wayne, he has to inject me in the neck, and that actually genuinely terrified me, because he wasn't just gently putting it on my neck. He was ramming it in my neck, and out the corner of my eye I can see it happening, but I'm being restrained, obviously in the film. That was a moment where I was actually not acting. It was genuine fear, because I saw this needle coming at my neck and I'm oh my god, what if they actually hurt me? So yeah, that was scary, but it looked good in the film, so oh well.
Spoiler alert. You always gotta say that, spoiler alert. Oh, how's the reception been on the film festival scene?
Yes, it is going through festivals at the moment, yeah.
How has the reception been for this film?
In general, or with festivals?
Any awards, any...
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's what I meant by that.
Yeah, so it's been it's going through the festival circuit now, and we've won some awards. which you probably would have seen. You know, we've been accepted into loads of different festivals. And we've actually won an award for one of the biggest film festivals in New York. And to actually get the award, someone has to go to collect it. So some guy who is a producer on the film and donated to the Indiegogo, he is traveling from Texas to New York to go collect the award for us on the 25th, which is fun. And we've won some other ones. I mean, we're getting entered into so many at the moment. It's kind of, you know, overwhelming how many we've been accepted into. So I can't necessarily remember exactly which ones we've won. I know we've won a couple, and I think some other ones that we've been entered into, we're still waiting for the screening day. So yeah, that one we won, which is, you know, really great. And it's nice that these film festivals, you know, liked our film, and I think it's really great for the cast and especially the crew as well, especially Jamie, to see, you know, a really positive outcome with the film, with winning these awards. Yeah, it was his first feature film and he's done an amazing job.
What upcoming projects do you have in the works?
So in total this year, I'm working on 7 feature films. So not too long after the Cellar wrapped, I went to Wiltshire to film on another film, which is a feature film. It's a crime detective film, and I play the lead character's wife in it. So I went and filmed that probably middle of last month, and I've got some projects coming up this week, actually, for a short film and another feature film. And then there's some other features that I can't mention because of you know, NDAs and stuff. There is actually one here in Brighton called Hegemony. It's basically a post-apocalyptic film, sci-fi again. And I've worked on that as well. I got another day of shooting, but that's pretty a big deal down in Brighton. Loads of creatives in Brighton have you know, helped out with the film, and there's a lot of effort going in to it with the person who's created it. And yeah, you know, once that film is out, it's going to be absolutely amazing. It's probably one of my other favourite films recently I've worked on. Everyone's so lovely. And yeah, there's some of the projects that I'm currently working on. Some I can't mention, as I said, NDAs, but definitely keep an eye out on my Facebook and Instagram for other projects, you know, that I'm working on. Yeah, because I'll be announcing them soon.
Now, how can they get a hold of you on Facebook and Instagram?
On Facebook, I am Meghan Adara, and then on Instagram, I am Meghan_Adara.
Well, Megan, I want to thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome, and have a good day.
And you, thank you. Bye.
Every day there's a family struggling with hospital bills to care for their sick child who is fighting an illness. There's a woman who is fighting breast cancer and is having trouble making ends meet while paying for their treatment. And there are burn victims that are going through treatments to heal their deep wounds. There is a charity in the horror community that helps these people. Scares That Care is an organization that helps families deal with the bills for their child. They help women get the treatment they need to fight breast cancer, and they help people who are dealing with severe burns get the help they need to heal. Scares That Care is a 100% volunteer organization and 501c3 nonprofit charity that is dedicated to helping these people in fighting real monsters. To find out more information or to donate to Scares That Care, you can go to www.scaresthatcare.org. Every donation helps Scares That Care fight real monsters. If you want to find out the latest news for Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show, you can follow the podcast on the Slasher app, Facebook, and Instagram at Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling. You can also listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, DarkDiscussions.com, and the Film Arcade Media YouTube channel at youtube.com/FilmArcadeMedia. What's Anthony T watching this episode? Well, I told you in the beginning of this episode that I would be reviewing a film from a director that her last film ended up on my top 10 list. That would be 2022 with her debut film, We're All Going to the World's Fair. Now she's back with a new film called I Saw the TV Glow, which I recently checked out on Max because, well, the only place I can get a DVD or Blu-ray of this film is on A24's official website, as this is not out on retail, which is ridiculous. Come on, A24. Put this film out on retail like Amazon and all those other major providers. Because it's not right that they're holding back films, seriously. But they'll put out Maxine, Civil War, those types of films, you see? But not put out films like I Saw the TV Glow. And before I get to this review any further, who would have thought I would be reviewing a film with Fred Durst in it? It may be the first of two films this year I review a film with Fred Durst in it, as he's also slated to appear in another A24 film near the end of the year this year called Y2K, which is also another horror film, ladies and gentlemen, as that's one of two anticipated horror films coming out in December. As you got that and Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. Who'd ever thought on my bingo card that I would be reviewing a film with Fred Durst this year? I didn't have it on my horror bingo card at all. Seriously. For those who don't know who Fred Durst is, he's the lead singer of Limp Bizkit, who were really popular back in the 90s and early 2000s. So, that's why we're mentioning Fred Durst here, everyone. But anyway, let's get back to the film I Saw the TV Glow. This is the latest film from director Jane Schoenberg, as she directed a great film and We're All Going to the World's Fair 2 years ago. Now this film here, let me just run down the quick synopsis on imdb.com. The film's about a teenager trying to survive life in the suburbs when a classmate introduces him to a mysterious late-night television show. That's the synopsis. Let's just say strange things happen when we start seeing clips of this late-night show in this film. Thoughts on this film? This is a very good film. This is one of the best horror films of the year, by far. And this is probably Schoenberg's best film out of the two that she's done so far, as this was a very great film from start to finish. This is a film that's not going to be for everyone. I'm guaranteeing you that, as this really is one of those psychological horror films that really has weird imagery and all craziness and bizarre moments, as this film really felt like Twin Peaks and maybe Buffy a little bit with the TV show within the movie. As this is just a great film. Seriously. And these are the types of horror films I don't mind sitting through, people. And I will review them here on this podcast. I just got done talking to an actress from a psychological horror film. Now I'm reviewing a psychological horror film. And I really love psychological horror films, because literally those are the types of films that make you think, make you realize what the hell is going on. And this film does a really great job of it. I like how Schoenberg does a very good job with the direction here, and she really does a good job making sure that everything is interesting. Whether it It's the lighting in this film, or the way that some certain aspects of this film look. Like the TV show, for example. It had that 90s feel to it with the ratio and everything. It worked perfectly. It wasn't like something where they're just adding the right ratio for widescreen television. It actually put in the right ratio for a 90s TV show. And I like that. That it takes its time to make sure the film looks a certain way in certain scenes. I like the whole part with the 90s. That was definitely really good. And one of my favorite things about this film has a really good score as well. This film has some excellent performances here as well from Justice Smith and Bridget Lundy Payne, as both those actors really do a great job with their characters here. I like how they make their characters interesting. I like the chemistry between those actors, as I really think that's one of the film's strong points. It's both of their performances in this film. Another thing that I really like was shown in Byrne's screenplay. I really think it's just a very good. It really had this weird David Lynch, David Cronenberg type feel to it. I like the fact that she's given more of a budget here with this film compared to her last film, as she really does a great job taking advantage of it and allowing to write these creative scenes. She also really does a good job with adding first-person narration. It feels weird to see characters talking within the film at the audience, but it works so well in this film. It just does. With its lead character. She also manages to keep a dark and gloomy tone throughout this film. I also like the fact that she adds a couple of songs within the middle of this film too, to also add to this Twin Peaks The Return vibe as well. As those scenes were very well executed at a timely point in this film, as it didn't take anything away from an important point in the film, but really added more to this surrealness of this film, which I liked a lot. And I also like the way that Justice Smith delivers his monologues in this film. He really makes sure that those scenes really stick out in this film. As if you're really not glued to those monologue scenes, you're probably lost in this film. Seriously. And you need a performer that can capture the attention along with well-written dialogue. And both of those happen here. Even the one with Bridget Lundy Payne towards the end of this film was also very good as well. I love the fact that these monologue scenes were written well, performed well, and directed well. They're one of the really big highlights of this film. And you really need those scenes to work very well to sell you on this film. Because if you're not buying into the surrealness of this film, guess what? You're not going to like this film at all. As I can see this film being very divisive, because this is one of those films where you really have to pay attention. Plus the fact we have a lot of psychological horror elements at play. And those can be tricky horror films to watch and like. But I saw the TV Glow, it's just excellent. It's easily top 3 excellent. And right now it's in my top 3 of 2024, as this is just an excellent film from start to finish. Fans of Twin Peaks and fans of 90s nostalgia will love this film. If they can get by all the weirdness and everything, you will like this film if you're a fan of the 90s. Seriously, you will love this film. And if you love Twin Peaks or any David Cronenberg film, you will definitely like this film, as this definitely caters to those fans of Lynch and Cronenberg. As Jill, Show, and Byrne does a great job with both her direction and her screenplay, as her second film is very much improved from her last film. And with the year almost over, it will probably get a high ranking on my year-end list. That's almost a certain at this point, as I never would have thought I Saw the TV Glow would be great, as this has been a great year for indie horror in terms of quality, and it just continues with I Saw the TV Glow, as it has great direction, great writing, and great performances by Justin Smith and Bridget Lundy Payne. Definitely check this film out on Max, or go over to A24 and buy that expensive Blu-ray, as it's ridiculous that this is not in retail stores, only on A24's official website. That is a crime. Seriously. As I'll probably hopefully wait to see if they have a Black Friday sale so I can buy this film, because I want to buy this film so bad. It's a great psychological horror film, and it's not even rated R. That's how great it is. A PG-13 psychological horror film that is great. Check it out whenever you can on Max. 5 stars. Next episode of Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show, I will be going through my Rhode Island Comic Con thoughts, as I have a lot of thoughts about this convention upcoming next episode. So that will pretty much take up most of the time, because I also have probably the wildest photo op story ever that I feel like I need to share. Seriously. It's just so wild. That ends in disaster. And it's not the con's fault, and it's nobody's fault that it ended in disaster. I'll explain why next episode. But it's not the con's fault or the photography company's fault. I'm just giving you clues there to what to expect on the craziest photo op I've ever done. And it is a crazy story that I need to share, seriously. And it's worth sharing on this podcast. As just to say, things did not go according to plan. You'll get both of my thoughts on that next episode. The thoughts on the con and the wildest photo op I've ever had at that took place at that con. So I will talk about that next episode. With that, I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, and other podcast providers that have Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show. Also, don't forget to subscribe on the YouTube channel over at Film Arcade Media. It's youtube.com at Film Arcade Media. You can also listen to the show on DocDiscussions.com. For the latest news on Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show, you can follow Facebook and Instagram at Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling, in the Slasher app as well, at Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling. And we also have a official Facebook group too over there. Just type in Anthony T's Horror and Wrestling Show Facebook group and you can join. That's simple. With that, I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. Have a good day. Support indie wrestling. Support indie horror. This has been a Film Arcade Media production.